Hey y'all, in today's video, I tried out 4 new to me crockpot recipes and they all turned out so dang good. I like to throw together a little crockpot video every now and then. That way everything can be in one place and hopefully there will be something here for most of y'all. I just love a good crockpot meal. I think it's perfect for those really busy days, and all of these recipes are going to be perfect for the really cold winter days ahead of us. So first up, I made a really delicious pot roast. Now, I've made many different pot roast recipes, but this is going to be my go-to when I want just a good classic pot roast. So here I have a little over 3 pounds of a boneless chuck roast. I waited for this to go on sale before purchasing, and I'm just going to sear it first before adding it to the crock pot. So I did season both sides of the meat with some sea salt and some freshly cracked black pepper. I added a couple tablespoons of olive oil to my cast iron skillet. I let it get really good and hot before adding in that meat, and I'm just simply searing it on both sides for about 3 minutes per side. So now that it has that beautiful golden brown crust on it, all those flavors are locked in, I went ahead and transferred it to my crock pot. So I am going to be adding in this whole bag of baby carrots. My daughter absolutely loves like cooked carrots in a pot roast, so I made sure to use the whole bag. You can use whatever veggies you want to. You can add some potatoes in there. That's typically what you do, but I decided to serve it over mashed potatoes this time. But now I'm going to make the broth that gets poured over the meat and veggies. So it starts with 2 cups of beef stock, and this right here is the secret ingredient. You add in a cup of apple juice. I've never done that with a pot roast, and I'm telling you, it's a game changer. Love the flavor that added and just a little bit of sweetness it added. I'm also going to do 2 big spoonfuls of some minced garlic, just using the stuff out of the jar for this. I'm also going to add in about a tablespoon worth of some tomato paste. Since I don't cook with onions, I am going to add in a lot of onion powder for the flavor. I'm doing about 2 tablespoons of some dried parsley, a teaspoon of some black pepper, and then 2.5 teaspoons of some salt. So I'm just going to give this a really good stir. All that parsley is going to kind of stay on top. It doesn't matter. It's all getting dumped in. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm just going to add that over the pot roast and the carrots. Just scraping the rest of that dried parsley off the side of the bowl. And then I'm just going to get this covered with a lid. And I let mine cook all day on low. You can cook this anywhere from 7 to 8 hours. Mine is typically done around the 7-hour mark. I try really hard not to overcook my meats because I just cannot stand that, but I especially try when it comes to a chuck roast since it is a little bit pricier. And there's just nothing better than a perfectly cooked chuck roast. So here I'm just showing y'all that everything cooked up perfectly. The carrots, absolute perfection, and the meat is just falling apart so easily. Usually when I make a chuck roast, I shred it up like pretty well, but this time I decided to leave it in bigger pieces. So now I'm going to show you on my plate. Like I said, I served it over some homemade mashed potatoes. I've got plenty of those carrots, and I made sure to add a good ladle of that broth from the crock pot over the potatoes. I served it with some rolls, and I also made some baked mac and cheese. This is the Teeny's version that I'm sure a lot of y'all have heard about, and it is definitely worth the hype. It is so good. And I did show me making that over on TikTok, so I will link that in the description box if you're interested. But this whole meal was just simply amazing. Up next, I'm making a pierogi casserole. This is the perfect dump and go crock pot meal, and it really exceeded my expectations. So I did start off by spraying my crock pot with some Pam, and then you need 3 boxes of pierogies. I went with the mini ones. I don't know if I've ever bought those before. My memory is terrible, but I like that you just toss those in frozen. And then you just need a package of any type of sausage you want. You could do Publix sausage. There's all kinds of different flavors and spice levels. You could do turkey sausage, chicken sausage. I just went with the regular smoked sausage because I know that's one that all my family really enjoys. So I just got that sliced up and thrown in on top, and I'm going to get all of that covered with 4 cups of chicken broth. The prep for this goes really quick, so I love that. And I did get this started late, so it all just worked out perfectly. But you do need a block of cream cheese. I did decide to cube it up first. I know a lot of people kind of make fun of recipes that use cream cheese. I've never really understood that. I understand if that's like not your thing, but we are a cream cheese loving family. I also added in a cup of shredded cheese. I'm being careful not to let the cheese touch the sides of this crock pot. This was the first crock pot that I ever got like a really long time ago, and it cooks super hot. So I knew that it would burn if the cheese was on the sides. But yeah, since I did get a little bit of a late start, I did decide to cook this on high for around 3 hours. So here's what it looks like after that cook time. I'm just gently stirring everything together. I was getting a little bit nervous because I saw that a couple were kind of falling apart, but most of them stayed together really well. And at this point, I'm going in and seasoning it with just a little bit of salt and pepper. You can do that like before you cook everything, but I thought it made more sense to do it after. I know it doesn't look too appetizing in the crock pot. It looks a little ugly, but once you plate it up, I think it looks pretty darn good. So I just served it with some steamed broccoli, and then we topped our casserole with some sour cream, some extra black pepper, and then some dried chives. And we loved it. Like, this was so delicious. I wish I made it sooner. I know it's an old recipe. Maybe some of y'all have made it. But yeah, and if you've never had a pierogi before, it's basically like cheesy mashed potatoes inside of a pasta. They're delicious. On this night, I'm going to be making some chili mac. If you watch all of my videos, you've probably noticed that I've been making lots of different versions of chili lately, and I typically don't do that, but it has become one of my kids' favorite meals, so obviously I want to make things that make them happy. So I started off with 1 pound of some really lean ground beef. I typically don't buy it that lean, but I knew that I wasn't going to brown my meat first. I was just going to throw it in the crock pot raw, so I didn't want it to be a greasy chili. So, you can brown it first if that's what you're more comfortable with, but I've had really good luck with cooking it this way. So I did break it up with a meat smash. I keep tripping up on that word, a meat smasher, and I sprayed it with some pan first. That way the meat wouldn't like cling to it. And then I just seasoned that meat with some salt, pepper, and onion powder. Now I'm just going to go in with a big spoonful of minced garlic, and then you need 2 cups of beef broth. I'm just going to finish off this container of beef stock that I had left over from the pot roast that I made. Then I'm going to grab 2 cans of chili beans, and you do not want to drain them. You want to leave them in that chili sauce that it comes in. You definitely want that in your chili, and I actually prefer like chili beans over kidney beans. That's just like a personal preference. I'm also going to go in with a 28-ounce can of crushed tomatoes. I really like the red gold. I usually stock up on those when they go on sale, but they're pretty cheap as is. I'm also going to do a regular size can of diced tomatoes, juice and all. Now I'm going to start adding in some spices. So I'm going to do a half a teaspoon of cumin, a heaping tablespoon of chili powder, and then just some salt and pepper to taste. You could also just do like a chili packet if you didn't want to do all that. And then now I'm going to add a couple of my own touches. I did a spoonful of brown sugar. I really like to add that to my personal like homemade chili recipes. I really like the way it balances everything out. And then I'm also going to go in with a good splash of Estelle seasoning. I talked about this in my last video. This is my first bottle that I've ever bought, so I thought that would add a nice little zing to it. And I'm just going to cook this on high for about 4 hours, or you can cook it on low for about 8 hours, just depending on whatever you want to do. So here's what it looks like after the 4 hours. As you can see, it is steaming hot and bubbly. The meat is fully cooked through. Now, the recipe does call for the elbow macaroni noodles to be cooked in the crock pot in the last I think it was 15 minutes of the cook time, but I'm not the biggest fan of pasta cooked in a crock pot. I've had a couple of good experiences or all right experiences with it, but I decided to play it on the safe side and just cook it separately. So I did 8 ounces of macaroni noodles, cooked it to al dente, drained it, and just stirred it on into the crock pot. I was worried about this turning out like too soupy, but the longer it sits, the thicker it's going to get, and the next day it's like 100 times better. That goes for pretty much like any chili recipe. The kids took the leftovers of this in their thermoses for school, and they really enjoyed that. Not a drop of this went to waste. So here's me serving up my bowl. I like to do shredded cheese, sour cream, and some crushed saltine crackers. This is a really good, just like basic chili mac, a really good simple crock pot recipe. And like I said, my family absolutely devoured this. So definitely going to save it, and I will most definitely make it again. Last but not least, I'm going to be making some crack, potato, and broccoli cheddar soup. So it starts off by cooking up a pound of bacon. So I quickly just dice that up before throwing it into my hot skillet. I'm just going to let it kind of fall apart as it cooks, and I'm just going to continue cooking it until it is nice and crispy. So while I'm waiting for that to do its thing, I'm going to start throwing everything else in the crock pot. So you need a bag of frozen shredded hash browns. So just throwing them in there frozen. And then the recipe calls for 2 cups of fresh broccoli. I'm not going to measure that out. I just grabbed a large head of broccoli at the store. I washed it good, and I cut it into somewhat small pieces. And then you're going to cover it with 6 cups of chicken broth. So I had 2 cups already in my fridge left over from something else. So I dumped that in there first, and then I opened up a box, which is 4 cups to give me the 6 cups total. It also calls for a can of broccoli cheese soup, so it's going to get all of that dumped in there. One thing I love about November, and something that I've noticed the last several years, is November is like the best time to stock up on like cream soups and broths. It's always the cheapest it's going to be all year long. I also bought a fresh container of ranch seasoning from Costco since I was out, so I opened up that bottle, and you need a packet's worth, so I added in 3 tablespoons. As you can see, my bacon is nice and crispy now, so I dumped in all of that. And I will say, I like that the bacon cooks with the soup all day long. It gives the whole like pot just a really good bacon flavor. But obviously, it is going to change the texture of the bacon, and it's not a bad thing. Like, it works, and my family tore this up. But I just think that next time I would probably maybe put some bacon grease instead in the pot to give it the flavor, and then just leave the crispy bacon to top our bowls with. Pretty sure that's what I'll do, but obviously do what you want there. It is good like this. But yeah, I put the lid on, and I cooked it on low for 8 hours. This is a really good recipe for when you're gone all day. And then, when it's done, I came in with a block of room temperature cream cheese and a bag of shredded sharp cheddar cheese. So 2 cups is what you need. So I'm just going to kind of break this up with my spatula, get that cheese stirred in good, and then I covered it back up, and I let it continue cooking on low for about not 15 minutes, about 10 minutes, just to make sure everything is really nice and melted. And just like what I said with the chili and pretty much any soup, the longer it sits is the thicker it's going to be. But here is what it looks like as soon as it is done. And y'all, this also exceeded my expectations. It was incredibly good. And that ranch seasoning is honestly the only seasoning it needs. You definitely don't need any additional salt. I did top our bowls with pepper and extra cheese, and I served it with some croissants from Costco that I just heated up in the oven for about 5 minutes and went really good with it. This was such a hit. So that is going to wrap up the video. I really hope that you enjoyed the recipes, and let me know down in the comments if you've tried like any really good crock pot recipes lately that you loved. I'm always looking for more ideas. But as always, thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys in my next video.